Alright, hello and welcome back to the channel. So, today I felt like just doing a quick video. Like, I'm going to try and keep it short because I've realized some of my videos are pretty long and, I don't think people want to keep watching like 25-minute videos of me just talking. So, I'm just going to get right into it. This is a video about how I winterize a four-wheeler slash ATV. This is just my methods of how I do it, and it's just some quick tips on how to keep your thing, whether it be a four-wheeler, a side-by-side, or whatever, even a dirt bike, it kind of applies to that as well. How to winterize it, and knowing that you're not going to be riding it for multiple months, like 3 or 4 months, it's good to do this. That way, it will be ready to go right when the spring or good riding conditions get here. So first off, you see that I have the seat here off. First thing that I'm going to go over is make sure you take your battery off. You don't necessarily have to disconnect it, or not take it out, but you should disconnect it. I mean, my bad. Take off the negative first, and then you're going to want to take off your positive. Disconnect those two things. Make sure they're out of the way and they're not going to be touching the battery terminals at all. Then just go ahead and connect the charger to it. Make sure it's charged up as much as it can be. It's 100% charged. Then take the charger off and do not connect it back together. Just leave it in the four-wheeler or ATV, whatever it is, if it has a electric start. Some of them don't have electric start. In that case, that doesn't apply to you if it has a kickstart. So, and never put your battery on the floor if you do take it out, because when you put it on the floor, especially cement, for reasons I'm not a scientist, so I'm not 100% why, but I do know it kills the battery if you leave it on the cement or the floor in general. It just kills the battery, the cold. So don't do that, because you'll end up having to buy a battery prematurely, and that's not something anybody wants to go spend 20-30 bucks on a little battery like that. So other things to check when you're winterizing, just kind of go through the entire underneath the seat. Maybe just wipe this all down. I'm not entirely done with this four-wheeler yet. We still got the fall, and so I'm still going to be riding it. I'm going to be doing some work with it, so I'm not going to detail it just yet. But if you know this is the last time you're riding it, you're going to want to just kind of go through, maybe clean up this dust a little bit. I'm not saying you have to go in there with a fine-tooth comb, but just maybe just get like a damp rag and just kind of wipe this all down, just so it's nice and clean for the summertime and it won't cause any problems down the road. Also, you're going to want to check your airbox. Depending on the type of four-wheeler or dirt bike or whatever it is, it's going to be a different spot, but find out where your airbox is. In this case, this one's under the seat. You know, I'll just pop this cover off, just like so. Put that aside, and just kind of check on your air filter. This one here is pretty darn dirty. I think it's the original filter. I clean it every year. I clean it a couple times a year. But it's about time I get a new one. It's just I have not had the time to really work on it. And if you do smell gas coming out of one of these, that's normal, because the engine, the carb is right there, and that's where the gas comes. The carb pulls air in through there. This is your carb, so it pulls air in, and then the gas mixes in there, so you're going to smell gas coming out here if you have this type of air box anyway, that is. So after you do that, you're just going to obviously put your cover back on. I put it on backwards, my bad, but you want to just put that back on the right way, that is. There you go, and just reconnect your little tabs here to keep it shut. And there you go. So that's pretty much it for being underneath here. Underneath the seat, that is, other than just double check all your lines, your fuel lines, double check your carburetor, make sure there's no cracks, make sure your wiring for your lights in the back and your battery, make sure all those wires are intact and well insulated. And I just dropped the phone, I'm sorry about that, but make sure all that's well insulated with good plastic, it's not cracked or brittle, and it's in good shape, because that can cost you a lot of money down the road if you're not careful and you don't keep an eye on that stuff. So other things you're going to want to double check is your oil. That's a big thing when you're going to be putting your thing up for winter. This is where you fill it up on this four-wheeler in particular. You fill it up through here, but you check your oil over here. So that's just another big thing you're going to want to go ahead and pull the little oil dipstick out. Make sure that it's got good enough oil. If the oil is dirty or it looks like it needs to be changed, go ahead and just change it over the winter. That's a good thing to do over the winter. Just like if you're bored one day, it's snowing out, and you're not a snow person, and you're not out there like some other people like myself would be, then that's a good opportunity for you to change the oil in this. It's very straightforward. I'm gonna make a video actually how to do it this winter, because I am gonna be changing the oil in this and this. Now, other things you're gonna want to definitely check are your spark plug over the winter. When you're winterizing it, just pull the spark plug while you're off, and then go ahead and check the spark plug to see how it looks, and make sure it's in good shape and nothing's wrong with it. Another thing you want to check while you're under here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but this right here is your fan. Make sure there's wires going to the fan. Make sure the fan blades are all solid. There's no cracks. It's not brittle. Make sure the wires, again, are in good shape. Make sure that's all solid. And now we're getting to the fun part of right here. I'm going to pull this little casing off right there like that. That's just a little cover. And you pop this out. Right here is your entire brake, rear foot brake assembly. Now, the thing is with these four-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff, these things tend to get stuck. Now, what I mean by that is they won't want to go down too well or come back up. And normally when you push down this with your foot, you let your foot off. So you push down, you let your foot up, and this is supposed to spring back up on its own. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. See, it doesn't spring back up. I got to physically push it up. I've been working on it because I never use this foot brake. I've never used it in the last 5+ years. We always use the two handle brakes right there. And the one on that side, we never use the foot brakes. So that's gotten stuck. It wouldn't even go down originally, but so another thing you want to do is, if that happens, or even before that happens, which is even better, it's called preventative maintenance. Go ahead and grab some PB Blaster or WD-40 every now and again. Spray it into the assembly down here where all those springs and levers are. Spray it and then just work the foot pedal up and down, up and down, up and down until it loosens up, and it will definitely help you in the long run, because it will help the brakes stop better, and it's definitely worth it. So coming around to the back, another thing I want to show you, part of the brake is right here. This right here is your drum brake. That's what slows it down. It goes onto the wheel, just like a truck or a car. Not too many with cars, but mostly trucks have drum brakes. You might want to just take your WD-40 or PB Blaster and spray that as well. Now, I recommend doing this outside because this will get all over your floor if you're inside your garage or your basement or whatever. But just do something like that. Just do that all the way around. And on these bolts and stuff, just spray them and make sure they're all nice and lubricated for the summertime. And it just helps in the long run. Coming to the back here as well, make sure your cords like this one I'm showing you for lights and everything under there, all the wires and stuff for the light is all intact and in good shape. That way you're not, losing your lights or anything, or having it ground out and maybe do something to the battery. Make sure here your suspension. This one's got a single suspension, solid rear axle, obviously. It's nothing fancy. It's not independent suspension, but yes, that is my foot. Make sure your differential here, this is your differential, and it connects to the drive shaft, which is right here, and it goes up to the engine, and that's what spins these two tires back here. So when you're looking at this, go ahead and make sure if you feel like you need to, pop this little bolt out and check your rear differential fluid, make sure there's fluid in there, and just see if it has enough. If you're not sure what you're doing with that, I wouldn't recommend going and just dumping fluid in there, because too much can harm the differential in there, and too little can obviously harm it. So if you're not 100% sure, maybe call up a dealer and have them do it for you, or ask them for how much they recommend, and go based off of that. So this is the ball hitch. Usually I would take this off, but I have like 3 of these sizes, and it's a universal size. I'm not sure the exact size on there. I can't really read. It's too rusted up. But it's a universal size, so I just leave it on here for work purposes. Another thing you're going to want to do is maybe just wash. Now, you see the mud hanging right back there, all that mud, all that good stuff. Maybe just wash that all out real good. If you have just a hose, or even better, a power washer, go ahead and just power wash this entire thing before you put it away for the winter. Because when you do, obviously be careful if you're using a really high pressure power washer, because it can break wires and components and stuff if you're not careful, and it can take off paint and stickers. So be careful, but you're definitely going to want to clean that, because having all that mud on there, it can rust out parts really easy over the winter, and it can just make a mess on your floor as well, which, you know, nobody really wants to clean up a messy floor. Let's be honest, nobody likes cleaning it. Same thing goes with the frame. Just spray that off and all that good stuff. It'll just help. It just helps with the longevity of the ATV four-wheeler frame, and all that good stuff. It just helps with that. Another thing you're gonna want to do before you put this thing up for the winter is double check like your little cubby here. Make sure everything in here is nice and dry and clean, and make sure there's no water or moisture in there, because if there is, that can like lead to unwind, like it can lead to mold or who knows what. You don't want any of that. And since we're down here, check your exhaust. Make sure all the bolts and stuff on here are tight, like this one, this one, this one. Make sure all those are tight and this thing is on there nice and solid, because that's the last thing you want, is especially if you do a lot of trail riding, to be riding and having this pop off. Because let me tell you, if you're riding on a trail or public land, like a state land owned four-wheeler trail, and you have a loud enough exhaust, a game warden has every right to stop you, because a lot of places they're illegal modified exhaust, and that even includes taking your exhaust pipe off. Now, I know that's kind of a nuisance to people. I mean, it's loud, especially people who spend money on it, and don't get me wrong, I love loud exhaust. But honestly, for me, it's just not worth getting in trouble. But I mostly stay around our house, so I could always modify this, but it's a work four-wheeler, so I don't have much need for it. But that's just like a little bit of advice. Another thing you're going to want to do is kind of go around these things up here, these racks. There's bolts and stuff that hold the racks on, and you might want to spray those down and with some WD-40 just to keep them rust free. And same, and with the seat as well, go ahead and like maybe wipe that off if you feel like it'll help the seat last longer. Other things you're going to want to just double check while you're looking at the four-wheeler. Double check that your turning on off for your gas works. Now, that being said, turn your gas off. That means when you're looking at this, there's like a little, I know it's hard to see, but you can see the white anyways. You can see this like a little white triangle looking thing. So down means it's on, and then as you turn it, it'll turn the four-wheeler's flow valve for the gas off. That's off. Then this is your reserve tank. That means if you run out of gas, you turn it all the way up, and there's like an extra like half gallon of fuel that will hopefully get you to where you're going. But I would turn, if you're really going to let this thing sit and you know you're not going to be using it, turn it to the off position while it's running. Turn this to the off position, and as it's running, it will start to sputter, and eventually it will stall and turn off. That means all the gas, or majority of the gas, is out of the carburetor right there, which is a good thing. That means less gas in the carburetor, less gooked up it will be in the springtime. And if I were you, I would even, I'm just turning mine back on because I'm still going to be using this. If I were you, I would recommend, if you know in advance, this is like if you know in advance, I know it's not ideal for everybody, but if you know in advance, like, I don't know, like a week or so in advance that you're going to be putting this up for the winter, check and see how much gas you have. And in this case, we have about a quarter of a tank. You can either drain your fuel or let it run. Just run until it's completely empty. And then once it's down on E, just keep running it and running it until it stalls out. I wouldn't recommend being like, you know, a half mile away from your house while you do that. But be right next to your house and let it run until it stalls out. That's just another way if you don't have one of the on-off switches, which a lot of things do. But if it doesn't, that's just another way of getting the four-wheeler's carburetor cleaned out if you don't feel like disconnecting fuel lines and all that stuff. You're just not that, or you're not good with that stuff, which not everybody is. So other things that you're going to want to check is your shifter. Make sure it's shifted all your gears nice and smooth before you put it up. Make sure your fan, like I said, make sure that works. Now the thing with the fan to make sure it works is kind of a hard thing to do, because with air-cooled four-wheelers such as this that have a fan on them, or fan cool I should say, it's hard to get the fans to go on unless they only go on when the engine is very, very hot. So you have to run the thing for a very long time to get it hot enough to the point where the engine says, okay, I'm going to turn a fan on. So it's not going to be really ideal. Just keep running it for an hour or two, or hours on that just to get the fan to go on. I mean, I know these ones work. And the funny thing is that this one will turn on after about, let's say, 45 minutes of being ran consistently. This one takes about an hour and 5 minutes to turn on if you run them both the same. That's just because this one doesn't run as hot as the Rancher or the Foreman, I mean. But a couple of other small things you might want to check is um, before you take your battery out and stuff like that, make sure your lights work, make sure your reverse light works, make sure your headlights, make sure those both works, your low beams um, and your high beams both click on and off. Make sure, and like I said, make sure your rear light back there works as well. Just so you don't have to worry about it in the summertime. And when the summer does get here, if you have a light out, you won't have to fix it. You can do it over winter. That's just another small thing to do. But other than that, go through all the bolts and stuff on the engine and in the front as well. It's going to be harder to see, but go through the bolts and stuff through here, your suspension components and all that stuff. Look for grease fitting points, because if you find grease points, they're like these little, it's kind of hard to explain because you can't, I don't really have any that are just conveniently placed for me to show you that are very easy to see. But if you look it up on your, look up your four-wheeler and just look up grease fitting points on like 2002 Honda Rancher 350 grease fitting points, and it'll show you a diagram of where they are. Get some grease and pump in some grease into those things because it definitely helps. But other than that, go through all these bolts and stuff, front and back and middle and sides, and just kind of spray them some WD-40 PB Blaster because it just helps prevent rust. That's like preventative maintenance. It's always a good thing to do. But a lot of things that I'm going through here are pretty universal on, like, say, a dirt bike. There's only a few different minor things on a dirt bike that you'd have to look at, such as the chain. Make sure that's good. Make sure that's got oil on a chain, bar oil on it. And that's pretty much, there's not too many differences between the two of them. Honestly, they're pretty much all the same. Make sure your choke cables, actually, now I think about it, make sure your choke works and functions properly. That way, if you do have to start the thing in the middle of the winter, especially if you leave it outside in an unheated environment like a shed or something, when you need to start it, you're going to need that choke. You have to obviously make sure there's gas in, make sure your gas is on, but that choke is going to be what starts a four-wheeler. Like this one, for instance, we leave this outside during the winter, we cover it, but we use that with the plow over there to plow, and obviously we always have to use the choke here, and if we didn't have choke, it wouldn't start. It would just sit there and die. It would just keep cranking over. It would start eventually, but it'd be very difficult without choke. So yeah, that's just some things that you should go through and check. It's pretty straightforward. I'm sorry about the longevity of these videos. I try and keep them as short, and I know I talk a lot, but I just want to have it as in-depth as possible. So believe me when I say I'm going to try and make a short video, this is short for me because I could sit here and talk for another 40 minutes probably about all this stuff on here. I mean, I could give you guys 10 minutes alone just on the airbox, and I try and keep that like under like a minute, a minute, maybe a minute and a half. So I'm sorry about the longevity. I hope that these videos help you out in the future. I will do a summer storage for snowmobiles as well when the spring gets here. I realized I never did that. But while we're standing here, one last thing of advice I want to go ahead and show you. Make sure you're right here. Not all four-wheelers have this. These two happen to have it. These are like the cigarette lighter type charger. You put the little round circle in there. It goes in there. You can use that for an air compressor thing to pump your tires up. You can use it to charge your phone, power a map. You can do it all stuff. Just make sure that works. Like put one in there, like one of those little charger ports that are like a circle. Put that in there. If it has a light on there, see if the light comes on, or just plug it into your phone and see if it works or not. I know both of these work. Like that one's right there, and then this one is right here. Make sure that's clean in there too. I mean, you don't want water and stuff getting in there. Make sure that's clean and just make sure they work. So, yeah, that's just some preventative maintenance and stuff for the winter time that I felt like sharing. I hope this video helps somebody down the road, and I hope that you guys like the video and subscribe. Thank you.